Buckingham Palace announced with deep sorrow the death of Catherine, Duchess of Kent. She passed away on the night of the 4th of September 2025 at Kensington Palace, surrounded by her family. She was 92 years old. With her passing, the British monarchy loses not only its oldest member, but also a personality who consciously distanced herself from the glitter of power for decades. King Charles III, Queen Camilla, and the closest members of the House of Windsor expressed their condolences to the Duke of Kent, his children, and his grandchildren. At the same time, a detail emerged that gives this farewell a historical dimension. The funeral will take place on the 16th of September 2025 in Westminster Cathedral. It will be the first Catholic funeral of a member of the British royal family in modern history. Until the day of the ceremony, the Duchess's coffin will rest in the private chapel of Kensington Palace. It will then be transferred to the cathedral, where a requiem mass and vigils will be held. The burial will later take place at the Royal Burial Ground in Frogmore, Windsor. For the duration of the mourning period, the palace has declared official court mourning. Flags will fly at half-mast, and members of the royal family will wear black. Yet these formal rituals tell only part of the story. The death of Catherine, Duchess of Kent, marks more than the end of a long life. It draws attention to a woman who quietly but consistently moved between tradition and personal conviction. A duchess who placed compassion above protocol, education above representation, and conscience above expectation. Who was this woman who, as a member of the royal family, made history without ever seeking the spotlight? And why does her final journey reveal more about the transformation of the British monarchy than many public speeches? Catherine Lucy Mary Worsley was born on the 22nd of February 1933 in Yorkshire, far from the ceremonial centres of London. She grew up at the family estate of Hovingham Hall as the only child of Sir William Worsley, a baronet and Lord Lieutenant of the county, and his wife, Lady Joyce Morgan Brunner. The world into which she was born was shaped by tradition, duty, and a deeply rooted sense of responsibility. Yet it was also a world that still allowed space for personal interests and quiet individuality. From an early age, Catherine showed a remarkable connection to music. Piano, organ, and violin were not merely part of her upbringing as polite accomplishments, but genuine passions. Music became a language through which she could express emotions that were rarely spoken openly in the reserved atmosphere of aristocratic life. As a young woman, she hoped to pursue formal training at the Royal Academy of Music. However, she was not admitted. It was an early disappointment, one that did not embitter her but instead shaped her resilience. Rather than retreat into the comfort of privilege, she chose a different path for a time. She worked in nurseries, caring for young children, an unusual step for a woman from Britain's aristocratic circles. These years, spent far from royal ceremony and social expectations, helped shape her perspective on ordinary life. She learned patience, attentiveness, and the quiet art of listening. Looking back, these early experiences seem almost like a preparation, not for a life in the spotlight, but for a role in which empathy, humility, and education would become more important than rank or title. Catherine Worsley developed a personal compass that was guided less by status than by meaning. It was a quality that would later become increasingly visible after her entry into the royal family. In 1956, a meeting took place that would permanently change Catherine's life. During military exercises in Yorkshire, she met Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, a first cousin of Queen Elizabeth II. The relationship between the young aristocrat and the prince developed gradually, watched carefully by the circles surrounding the royal family. Although Catherine came from a respected aristocratic background, she was not part of a reigning royal house. To some observers, she appeared quiet and perhaps too independent for the highly structured world of the monarchy. Despite these initial reservations, the couple eventually received approval to marry. On the 8th of June 1961, their wedding took place in York Minster, celebrated with full royal ceremony. Queen Elizabeth II, the Queen Mother, and numerous representatives of European royal families were present. From that moment forward, Catherine officially entered the world of the British monarchy. She received the title Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Kent, and together with her husband, moved into their residence at Kensington Palace. Over the following years, the couple welcomed 3 children, George, Helen, and Nicholas. Publicly, the Duchess fulfilled the expectations placed upon a member of the royal family. She attended state events, official receptions, ceremonial openings, and numerous public appearances. Like other senior royals, she was occasionally seen standing on the balcony of Buckingham Palace during major national celebrations. Yet behind this formal presence stood a woman who never regarded distance as a virtue. Catherine made a quiet effort to remain approachable within the rigid structures of royal life. Staff members, visitors, and members of the public often remarked on her openness and gentle manner. Without grand gestures and without seeking attention, she carried out her role with quiet dignity. Even in these early years, it became clear that Catherine would pursue her own path within the House of Windsor, one defined not by spectacle, but by character, conviction, and an enduring sense of humanity. From the 1960s onward, the Duchess of Kent became a familiar presence in the public life of the monarchy. She attended openings, receptions, and official ceremonies, always appropriately dressed, yet never projecting the distant formality that many associated with the British royal household. Her manner was calm and understated. Precisely because of this, she appeared approachable. Observers often described her as attentive, warm, and free from the rigid stiffness that royal protocol sometimes demanded. This character became especially visible in the world of sports, particularly tennis. Her husband, the Duke of Kent, served as president of the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club for more than 3 decades. As a result, Catherine was frequently present at the Wimbledon championships. She occupied her place in the royal box, yet she never remained a passive symbol of ceremony. She followed the matches with genuine enthusiasm, interacting naturally with players and spectators alike. Over time, she became one of the tournament's most recognizable royal figures. One moment in particular left a lasting impression on the public memory. In 1993, Czech tennis player Jana Novotna lost the Wimbledon final after a dramatic collapse during the match. Overwhelmed with disappointment, she stood on center court in tears. In that moment, the Duchess of Kent stepped down from the royal box, approached the player, and embraced her. She whispered words of encouragement, away from protocol, and far beyond what was expected in such a setting. Years later, Wimbledon would remember this scene as one of the most human moments in the tournament's history. When Novotna eventually won the championship in 1998, many recalled that earlier moment as a symbol of resilience and quiet encouragement. Catherine was also willing to challenge tradition when she felt it conflicted with fairness. In 1999, she reportedly confronted Wimbledon officials after a special invited child was denied access to the royal box. To her, the issue was not a matter of rules, but of simple humanity. The incident revealed a personality willing to question convention whenever it clashed with compassion. Music remained the constant thread running through the life of the Duchess of Kent. What had begun in her childhood gradually evolved into a deeper sense of purpose in adulthood. Catherine did not limit herself to ceremonial patronages. Instead, she sought direct involvement in the musical education of young people. She supported choirs, music schools, and educational initiatives, with a particular focus on children who lacked access to classical music due to financial or social barriers. In the mid-1990s, she made a decision that many within royal circles considered unusual, even surprising. She began gradually stepping away from the formal schedule of royal engagements in order to dedicate more time to teaching music herself. In 1996, she started working at a primary school in Hull, in northern England. But she did not arrive as a duchess. Instead, she introduced herself simply as Mrs. Kent. Her identity remained unknown to most teachers, parents, and students. Only the headmaster was aware of who she truly was. For more than 13 years, she visited the school regularly, teaching piano, leading the school choir, and introducing children to the joy of music. Those who later spoke about her remembered her patience and warmth. She never raised her voice, and she encouraged students gently, rather than demanding perfection. For the children, she was simply a music teacher. For Catherine, the anonymity created a rare space of freedom, far removed from royal expectations. At the same time, she also taught music at a school in Hammersmith, London, attended largely by children from disadvantaged backgrounds. Beyond the classroom, she supported community choirs and offered guidance to young musicians who might otherwise never have found opportunities in classical music. In 2004, she expanded this mission by founding the charity Future Talent. The organization provides scholarships and professional support for gifted children from low-income families who wish to pursue music education. Through this initiative, many young musicians were able to receive training and instruments that would otherwise have remained beyond their reach. This chapter of her life revealed a duchess who viewed her title not as a barrier, but as a responsibility. By working quietly behind the scenes, she showed that meaningful service did not always require public recognition. Another turning point in the life of the Duchess of Kent unfolded far from public attention. In January 1994, Catherine made a deeply personal decision. She converted to the Roman Catholic Church. Within the context of the British monarchy, this was a step of considerable symbolic significance. Since the Reformation, the identity of the royal family had been closely linked to the Church of England, with the monarch serving as its supreme governor. Catherine's conversion, however, was not an act of protest or defiance. It emerged from a long and thoughtful spiritual journey. For months, she studied Catholic teachings and engaged in private conversations about faith and belief. Before formally taking this step, she informed Queen Elizabeth II personally. The Queen understood that the decision was a matter of individual conscience rather than institutional disagreement, and gave her approval. In December 1994, Catherine was officially received into the Catholic Church during a private ceremony at Westminster Cathedral. Later, she explained that she had found within the Catholic tradition a sense of clarity and structure that resonated deeply with her personal understanding of faith. Her choice, she emphasized, was not directed against the Anglican Church, but represented a personal search for spiritual guidance. Legally, the decision had no impact on her position within the royal family. Her husband, the Duke of Kent, remained unchanged in the line of succession. Years later, their youngest son, Lord Nicholas Windsor, would also choose to convert to Catholicism, following his mother's example. Leaders of the Church of England responded with notable respect, describing her decision as the path of a devoted Christian following her conscience. The moment reflected a broader atmosphere of growing religious tolerance between denominations. From then on, Catherine practiced her Catholic faith openly but without drawing attention to it. She attended Mass regularly at Westminster Cathedral, while still accompanying members of her family to Anglican ceremonies when circumstances required. Her quiet decision became, over time, a subtle symbol of personal freedom within an institution long associated with tradition and continuity. From the mid-1990s onward, Catherine gradually withdrew from public life. In 1996, she announced that she would step back from most of her official royal duties. The decision reflected not only a desire for a quieter existence, but also the impact of ongoing health challenges that increasingly limited her energy. Years earlier, in the 1970s, she had already faced profound personal loss. The death of 2 babies shortly after birth plunged her into a period of severe emotional exhaustion. She later spent several weeks in hospital receiving treatment for what was then described as nervous exhaustion. Unlike many members of the royal family before her, Catherine later spoke openly about this experience. She described how deeply the loss affected her and how little society understood the emotional weight carried by women facing such grief. Her honesty helped bring attention to a subject that had long remained unspoken in royal circles. In the 1990s, further health complications appeared. She was diagnosed with the Epstein-Barr virus, which contributed to chronic fatigue and left her with limited physical strength for prolonged public engagements. In addition, she suffered from coeliac disease, an autoimmune condition requiring a strict, lifelong diet. These medical challenges made it increasingly difficult for her to continue the demanding schedule expected of a working royal. In 2002, she made another unusual request. She asked that she no longer be formally addressed as Her Royal Highness, preferring instead to be known simply as Catherine, Duchess of Kent. Although she legally retained the title, the gesture reflected her long-standing discomfort with the barriers created by rank and protocol. In the years that followed, her public appearances became rare. She did not attend the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022, nor the coronation of King Charles III in 2023. Instead, she lived quietly, largely away from public attention, making only occasional appearances at important family events. Her withdrawal was gradual and dignified, carried out without announcements or farewell speeches. In the final years of her life, Catherine, Duchess of Kent, lived quietly between her apartment at Kensington Palace and her country home in Oxfordshire. Public appearances became increasingly rare and were usually private in nature. Despite growing physical fragility, her mind remained sharp and engaged. She continued to follow developments in music education and the arts, and she took a lasting interest in the progress of the young musicians supported by her charity. Even in advanced age, she was known to sit at the piano and play in the quiet of her home. When she passed away in September 2025, she left behind no grand political legacy, no sweeping reforms, and no dramatic public statements. Yet her life reflected a subtle transformation within the British monarchy. Catherine demonstrated that closeness to ordinary people did not weaken the institution, that education could be a form of royal service, and that personal conscience could exist alongside tradition. Within the House of Windsor, she was regarded as dependable, thoughtful, and deeply humane. Among the public, she was often seen as one of the most modest members of the royal family, a duchess who shook hands without gloves, who could travel unnoticed on public transport, and who found greater meaning in a classroom than in the formal grandeur of royal banquets. Her religious journey formed part of that quiet legacy as well. Her conversion to Catholicism was not a dramatic break with tradition, but rather a reflection of personal conviction. The fact that her funeral would take place in a Catholic cathedral, with the reigning monarch in attendance, illustrates how the monarchy itself has evolved. The Duke of Kent loses a companion of more than 6 decades. Their children lose a mother who taught them humility, compassion, and service. And the monarchy loses one of its quietest voices, perhaps also one of its most sincere.